last, with only a few main series Final Fantasy games left to play, I'm finishing out the much maligned 13 trilogy with Lightning Returns Final Fantasy XIII. As you may know from my previous videos, I enjoyed both FF13 and 13-2, so I was eager to play this one, yet at the same time hesitant. I'd heard it was way different from the first two, more action-focused, more difficult, and with a time limit to boot. That was enough to get me to play on easy mode, which many folks online recommend. However, for reasons I'll explain later, I wish I'd played on normal, and as of writing this review, I've gotten far enough into a second playthrough on normal to compare. Real quick before I go on though, consider hitting that thumbs up button. It really helps the channel reach more RPG fans, and subscribe for the rest of this series and videos about other RPGs. Alright, it's weird to start by talking about difficulty settings of all things, but turns out they're very relevant. Due to Lightning Returns' structure, playing on easy impacts the rest of the content outside of combat as much as the combat itself. See, the whole game is on a timer, and unlike in, say, Majora's Mask, there's no magical rewind feature. You've got 13 days to get as much done as you can, period. Since most quests are time dependent, it can seem a little overwhelming even though there's actually plenty of time to do everything. Despite that, on occasion I found myself stressing to reach a destination in time, which is where EP comes in. EP is a resource for special character abilities, one of which pauses time for a minute or so. That might not seem like much, but you can cover a lot of ground in a full minute, and for only one EP. That's pretty great, and damn useful when going for 100%. The thing is, EP only gets restored by battling, yet it's also a key part of battles. It's used to trigger this game's version of Limit Break or Overdrive mode, or to fully heal you, or most importantly, to escape from battles. Yeah, you have to pay 1 EP to escape a battle, and with dangerous monsters roaming the open areas you gotta explore, that can be a problem given how precious EP is. Low on HP and run into an enemy beyond your capability? Hope you saved recently. Here's the kicker though, on easy mode, escaping battles is free. You also get double the EP from battles, a massive cushion. These two changes alone make the game more manageable and, for me, more fun. In that respect, I'm glad I played on easy first. I may be flying through normal mode now that I know the game well, but I could see myself getting a little frustrated on a first playthrough. On the other hand, combat is damn near the only interesting part of the game, and the EP boosting changes I mentioned kinda make it feel like I was cheating. Enemies have less HP, but other than that, stats and the actual combat are the same as on normal, so all easy mode does is let you cheese through many battles that would otherwise require strategy. Here's why. On easy, you can spam your strongest attacks and get through most common enemies and even bosses by hitting them with elements they're weak against. This spam strat doesn't often work on normal, but on easy it's so simple and effective that I couldn't resist using it as a staple, blasting through most enemies with my high magic build. Then I hit a wall on a boss and finally had to figure out the stagger system. To be fair, Lightning Returns uses a new stagger gauge that's confusing as heck until you get used to it, and bosses now have strange stagger requirements you can achieve to move them to a higher stagger stage, letting you deal more damage. There's also not much visual indication of when enemies enter or leave the stagger state. You really have to pay attention. That's all okay though. Once I got the hang of it, crafting strats to take down bosses became way more fun and the battles way faster. Looking back, I should have just started on normal instead of listening to silly opinions on the internet. Everyone said 13 was tough too, but I had a similar experience with that one. Lightning Returns is not difficult once you understand the stagger system. However, it is worth acknowledging that these are a lot of changes for an entry in a long-running series to make, let alone the finale of a trilogy after 2 games with near-identical combat. I ended up having a ton of fun with the battle system, but changes like these clearly mark the start of an even more action-oriented direction for the series that makes me wary. I play plenty of action games, no doubt, but I'd love to see Final Fantasy embrace its turn-based roots in some respect going forward. FF7 Remake's combat system gave me some hope, but FF16 seems to be heading even more in this action-oriented direction. Ah well. Lightning Returns mixes and mashes ideas from its own trilogy as well as older games, combining 13's paradigm changes with FF10-2's dress spheres. Now, instead of 3 characters with different roles or jobs, you play as just Lightning with 3 different schemas to switch from, which are basically outfits with their own gear, bonuses, and abilities. These look super sick, and there's a ton of them, something like 80 I believe. I swear, Square put more resources into making Lightning look sexy in these get-ups than into making their environments look even halfway decent, but I'm not complaining about that too much. In a fix to a common complaint about 13's paradigm, switching schemas happens instantly, thank God. This does make Lightning Returns more action-oriented, but with that comes the ability to optimize, my favorite. Instead of giving every schema a guard option, I gave guard to one schema and switched to that whenever I needed to avoid a boss attack. The game's fast enough to keep up, so it worked great. I've never seen this kind of risk-reward in a Final Fantasy game before, so there's obviously merit to Square's approach here. I like to think I'm a pretty open-minded fan, so Square's current direction won't bother me as long as their systems remain fun. Unfortunately, the rest of Lightning Returns lands with a thud in meh territory. Below average even. The world is bland and boring, nearly all the quests are throwaway or even banal nonsense, and there's not much story to speak of, it's all at the start and end. Hundreds of years after the events of 13.2, humans no longer age or reproduce, and the world has come to a standstill as everyone waits to die. Whoa. The ultimate Big Daddy God Bunavelza, mentioned in previous games, chooses Lightning, who else, to save people's souls so they can live in a new world he plans to create. And all I can say is, holy cow. Like 13.2, we're diving into a completely unrelated plot that just happens to include the characters from the last game. Man, what a weird trilogy. All the little details and threads present since the first game make it apparent the writers planned out at least some of this from the start, yet each game feels disjointed anyhow, tied together by fraying threads. I guess they were going for something more thematic and epic, attempting to tell a grand story on a universe-altering scale, but the lack of a cohesive, singular narrative kills that for me. The themes of hope, trust, and overcoming so-called destiny with the help of those you love did hit home, and I felt a little something inside watching those final scenes, but there's not enough actual plot otherwise to get me excited. Lightning Returns is a podcast game through and through. Turn on a podcast or some music, chill out while busting through side quests, and you'll have a good time. But back to Lightning herself, she's got more personality this time. She's sarcastic, even sassy, and while she's never annoying, this shift in tone doesn't work for me. It's like she's a different character instead of the cold, gruff Lightning I've come to love. It has been 500 years, so I can explain it away in my head, but that's not satisfying. If anything, I would have expected her to grow even colder during all that time. And if you're wondering how the heck she saves souls, well, it's by finishing quests. Yeah, in fact, that's the only way to raise your stats. It's kind of a weird system. There's no experience points in Lightning Returns. Instead, the more quests you do, the stronger you'll get. So on higher difficulties, saving time in the overworld matters since you'll want to finish all the quests you can squeeze in before the end. While most of these quests are dull, I at least enjoyed running around the world for the 40 or so hours of my first playthrough, despite the downright awful visuals compared to Final Fantasy XIII. I like how each region of the map has its own gimmick to keep gameplay from feeling too samey, for example. Luxarian's the home base city with lots going on, Yusnan is the only other major city, the Dead Dunes give you Fang as a party member, plus let you warp around via cactuar statues like in 13.2, and the Wildlands let you ride a chocobo. That's a nice variety, but it doesn't save the world from feeling lifeless. By around halfway through, I was going through the motions, skipping through quests instead of hanging on to every word of dialogue like I usually do with JRPGs. Overall, Lightning Returns feels unnecessary. 13.2 didn't need a sequel, heck, 13 didn't, and this whole Fabula Nova Crystallis project seems ill-conceived from the start. While I love the first two entries, and I like this one okay, none of them achieved the heights I think the devs were aiming for. Which brings us to tier list time, and this is the toughest one yet. I'm torn. Lightning Returns sports really damn fun combat that marks a new action-oriented direction for the series. On the other hand, its world and characters are forgettable, and though the story adequately concludes the trilogy, this is barely a trilogy in the first place. The three games don't have a ton to do with each other despite featuring the same characters, and Lightning Returns suffers most from this lack of cohesion. but it's not bad and I enjoyed most of my time with it, so it's gotta go at least above 4, but above 8? I don't know. My main problem with that game was how easy it is to break, as well as its meh characters and story, but I appreciate all its wacky innovations. In comparison, Lightning Returns gets by almost on combat alone, and that's enough to knock it below 8, at least for now. For my next newcomer's perspective, I'll be checking out Final Fantasy XV. That's right, the most recent entry, at least until Final Fantasy XVI came out. I don't know when I'm gonna get to that one, but hopefully eventually. Anyway, thanks for watching. Leave a like for that algorithm, subscribe for the rest of my Final Fantasy Newcomer's Perspective series, let me know your thoughts on Lightning Returns in the comments, and have a blessed day.